This project started as conversations. Just people talking about themselves. Sometimes casually, sometimes without realizing what they were revealing, and the more I listened, the more I noticed the same thing coming up. Identity. Not in a big, labeled way, but in the small stuff, and how people described themselves, and what they care about, what they don't say out loud. In this series, I'm going to talk about a few different people. Each one gets their own moment. This isn't about summarizing who they are. It's about noticing them. About how identity shows up when you actually slow down and listen. Jackie Miller. Jackie Miller stood out to me. Not because she demands attention, but because she understands herself. When Jackie talks about who she is, she does it quietly. Not in a way that hides, but in a way that feels certain. That self-awareness shapes how she moves through the world and how she shows up for other people. When I asked Jackie what color she would be and why, she chose coral, saying it is, quote, subtle but still bright. That answer matters because it reflects how she sees her identity. Jackie doesn't need to be loud to be noticed, but she also doesn't disappear. She carries warmth without forcing it, and confidence without announcing it. Jackie also spoke honestly about anxiety and how it affects her life. She told me, quote, my OCD makes me really particular about how things are done. Instead of seeing this as something negative, Jackie has learned to understand it as part of who she is. That awareness has shaped her into someone who is careful, intentional, and thoughtful about the choices she makes. A lot of Jackie's identity comes from the values she was raised with, especially kindness and helping others. She tries to make decisions with those values in mind, and looks up to her sisters who are, quote, cool and caring and passionate. Jackie hopes to grow into someone like that herself, which shows that her identity is still growing while staying grounded in who she already is. Listening to Jackie made it clear that identity doesn't have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes it's steady, sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes it's simply knowing who you are and being comfortable standing there. Jessica Chapman. Miss Chapman stood out to me because of how honest she is about her experiences that shaped who she is. When she talks about herself, she doesn't sugarcoat things. She reflects openly on her past and how it continues to influence the way she moves through the world now. When I asked Miss Chapman what color she would be and why, she chose sunset orange, explaining that it is, quote, beautiful, but it fades really fast. She said the color reminds her of how her emotions rise and fall. That response stood out to me because it shows how aware she is of her emotional depth and how that awareness is part of her identity. Miss Chapman also talked about growing up in Griswold and how her family dynamic shaped her sense of self. She explained that her brother needed more attention growing up, which sometimes caused her to feel overlooked. She told me, quote, I just got ignored, and shared that this experience still affects her today. Instead of letting that define her negatively, it shaped her into someone who works hard to make others feel seen and valued. One of the values that defines Miss Chapman's identity most is integrity. She told me, if you do not have integrity, you miss every other value. This belief guides how she treats others and the standards she holds herself to. Miss Chapman also finds identity through growth and learning. She enjoys pottery, baking, horseback riding, and learning new things because, as she said, quote, every time I learn something new, and makes me see the world differently. These experiences help her continue to grow and better understand herself. Listening to Ms. Chapman made it clear that identity is not something fixed. It is shaped by experience, reflection, and the choice to keep growing. Paige Fitzpatrick. Paige Fitzpatrick stayed with me. At first, she comes across as quiet, the kind of person who doesn't rush to take up space, but once she feels safe, you can see who she really is. When I asked Paige what color she would be, she said red. She explained that she chose it because she feels things deeply and can be intense with the people she loves. She also described herself as a romantic, and honestly, that felt right. It felt like she knew herself better than she realized. Paige grew up in Voluntown, a small town where everyone knows everyone. She doesn't think she was sheltered, but she can't tell the environment shaped her. It taught her the importance of respect, especially towards her mom. One of her biggest values, she told me, is, quote, staying true to yourself, even when it's hard. That idea shows up again and again in how she talks about her choices and the way she sees herself. Paige also shared that one of the ways she calms herself when she's anxious is by doing her makeup. She explained that it helps her because it is, quote, how I respect myself when I am anxious. That stood out to me because it shows how her identity is tied to self-care and learning how to ground herself instead of ignoring what she feels. One of the most impactful moments of our interview was when Paige talked about her sister's depression. She shared that during that time, quote, everyone focused on her and I felt ignored. That experience stayed with Paige and eventually led her to therapy herself. She said therapy taught her how to cope and better understand who she is. Listening to Paige made it clear that her identity is shaped by emotion, honesty, and a strong commitment to staying true to herself, even when it's difficult. Fiona Chen. Fiona Chen is someone who carries a lot quietly. When I talked with her, it was clear that she thinks deeply about who she is and how she's expected to move through the world, even when she doesn't always say it out loud. Fiona grew up in a very strict cultural environment, and she spoke honestly about how that shaped her identity. She told me, quote, my parents worked so hard to get here, so I have to work just as hard. That sense of responsibility follows her everywhere. As a first-generation student, she shared that she sometimes feels like she has to figure everything out on her own. That pressure has shaped her independence, but it has also shaped how much she expects from herself. One of the values Fiona cares about most is consistency. She explained that staying organized helps her feel grounded, and she tries to live by what she called, quote, staying organized because structure gives her a sense of control when things feel overwhelming. Fiona's friends describe her as outgoing, kind, and hardworking, but when I talked with her, I noticed there's a quieter side to her identity too. She shared that she feels most like herself during moments when it's quiet and she doesn't have to talk. Those peaceful moments matter to her because they give her space to think, to breathe, to reset. Fiona also admires confidence in other people. She told me she likes when, quote, people know what they stand for. That stood out to me because it reflects something she is still building in herself. She shared that both school and culture have had the biggest impact on who she is today, shaping her values, her discipline, and her sense of responsibility. Listening to Fiona made it clear that her identity is shaped by pressure, reflection, and a quiet strength. She carries a lot, and she does it without needing recognition. Mason Burke Zuber. Mason Burke Zuber carries a lot quietly. When I talked with him, it became clear that much of his identity comes from the things he's held in for a long time. rather than the things he openly talks about. Mason told me that he would be the color blue. He laughed when he said it because he wasn't exactly sure why, but that hesitation said a lot. Mason feels things deeply, often more deeply than he explains them. He shared that he's a night person because he, quote, hates waking up and likes being awake when everything else is quiet. That quiet seems to give him a space to think and exist without pressure. Mason talked about how much he loves to draw and play video games. He said Minecraft is his favorite because, quote, you get to build things and it makes me feel calm. That stood out to me because creating something seems to be how Mason processes the world. One of his favorite memories was seeing a sea turtle in Hawaii and watching it return to the water. One of the few moments he described with really clear emotion. A lot of Mason's identity comes from how he was raised. He shared that he grew up with the values of being hardworking and kind, but he also admitted, quote, I put everything before myself. He struggles with motivation and feels guilty saying no to people, which has shaped how he sees his own needs. Mason also spoke honestly about his mental health and how it changed the way he sees himself. He shared that when he tried opening up to his mom and felt judged, he said, quote, I stopped telling her things. And that moment changed their relationship. Listening to Mason made it clear that his identity is shaped by sensitivity, creativity, and the desire to feel understood. He deserves spaces where he doesn't have to carry everything alone, where being himself feels safe. Listening to all these conversations back, I realized something. Identity doesn't show up the same for everyone. For some people, it's quiet. For others, it's shaped by pressure, by responsibility, by emotion, or by the things they've had to carry for a long time. What stood out to me most wasn't how different people are, but how human they are. Each person I talk to is still figuring things out, still growing, still learning how to be themselves in a world that doesn't always make that easy. This project taught me that identity isn't something you finish. It's something you build slowly, through experiences, through values, and through the moments that stay with you. Sometimes identity shows up loudly, and sometimes it shows up in the quiet, in the way someone speaks, in what they choose to protect, or in what they're still learning to say out loud. These stories reminded me that everyone is carrying something, and everyone deserves to feel seen for who they are, not just who they appear to be.